All right, welcome to the last segment of this class. Have y'all enjoyed it? Different, yeah? More fun than you would have thought by the name of the class, accounting research, right?
Yeah, not at all what I was expecting.
No, that's good. Yeah, we wanted to make it a little bit different. So I think you'll find these last 2 weeks, or our last two meetings, we won't meet next week, but to be even more different in a good way. So, so let's begin. Y'all had a little assignment that was due, where y'all had a really easy research question to answer, right? Y'all struggle through that at all?
It was too vague.
It was very vague.
So,
It wasn't vague. What was vague about it? Like, hey, you got this, current or not?
if I thought what I did was okay, then I'm okay. I'm not 100%. No, I went with it.
I mean, yeah, there were some assumptions you needed to make for sure, and that's part of the idea behind it. I mean, it was short, so let's talk about that. So, well, first of all, right or wrong is not a big deal. I mean, I might give you a little trouble about it, but it won't affect your grade. It wasn't an easy question. It was short, but it was not an easy question. So our question was, so we have a scenario, we're putting ourselves on the job. So we're working as a staff accountant, and your manager, me, is helping one of our company clients, and we have a question, a real short question. We need to research whether a U.S. Treasury note that the client purchased 5 years ago as an investment should be classified as a current asset now that it's only 2 months away from maturity. That's the question, right? So our client has an investment. They've invested in some government debt. 5 years ago, they did that. They've had it for this long. In 2 months, it's about to mature, but they've got to put the financial statements together before that happens. So the question is, does that stay in long-term assets, or does it get reclassified as a current asset? So,
I mean, the first question is, does he keep it? Does he sell it? What does he do?
well, he's obviously keeping it. It's 2 months. It's going to mature.
You never know. I mean,
You never know. Well,
if somebody needs money right away, they can sell it.
so you bring up a good point. So y'all are already thinking, all right, I need to assume this, I need to assume that. And I did notice a few people actually said, I am assuming that in their email communication, I'm assuming that this, because you're right, it may not necessarily be so, but it probably is so that they're going to hang on till it matures, and that'll be that. But it's good to say, I'm answering your question based on this assumption. That's a very good, very important thing to do. And a handful of people actually did do that, so that's a good thing. And it was always that assumption. I'm assuming that, first of all, I'm assuming that you have had these classified as held to maturity since the beginning, and I'm assuming you are planning on holding them until maturity and all of that. However, would that really matter? I mean, if they're selling it right now, then it won't be, what's the difference in selling it now or in 2 months or whatever, so it probably wouldn't matter either way, right? So the answers that came in were varied. And again, this isn't the focus on the question, or the focus on this assignment is not necessarily finding the answer, although it would be important to find the answer. Our focus is how well are we communicating our answer. Now, it doesn't matter how great your communication is if you're telling them the wrong thing, right? So you do want to make sure that you are getting in the neighborhood of the right answer, and if not, at least you can justify why you did come up with the answer that you did. That's what's important, because this is like, it is a little short. It's like, okay, is that all I got to go on? what if this, what if that? So yeah, you do need to state what assumptions did I make here. You need to definitely back up your answer with good citations of the code, right? Well, here's the answer. Again, don't freak out, it doesn't matter. The answer is stays non-current. That is the answer. And here's, there's a giant explanation about all of that, which y'all probably would like to hear. This is the official, what am I calling it? Solution manual answer to this. So it says in the solution manual to the people, the authors who posed this question, it says per Accounting Standards Codification 210.10.45.1. Current assets section of the balance sheet generally includes cash and cash equivalents, among other assets. And then they say cash equivalents are defined as blah, blah, blah in the glossary. And then they have a whole cutout of that code section. And then they say generally only investments with, and they highlight original maturities, 3 months or less qualify under that definition. Original maturity means original maturity to the entity holding the investment. For example, both a 3-month U.S. Treasury bill and a 3-year U.S. Treasury note, those were purchased 3 months from maturity. They both qualify as cash equivalents and current assets. However, a Treasury note purchased 3 years ago does not become a cash equivalent when its remaining maturity is 3 months. So because this company, our client here, purchased the Treasury note 5 years ago, these notes do not become a cash equivalent. Right? A lot of people did get into that part of it. It says not a cash equivalent. But anyway, it says these notes do not become a cash equivalent when their remaining maturity is 3 months or less. The notes, and this is the rest of it, that a lot of people got this far on it. And then the rest of it is the notes also do not meet the description of any of the other types of assets that are potentially classified within the current assets category. And then they shift us on into this codification in 210, 10, and 45. So there you go. Just so you know, that's the answer to this. So that's fine. I wanted one that we had to think about a little bit. I wanted one that wasn't just flat out clear, and probably an idea we hadn't really come across before. We do it on the debt side of things. We have a current portion of long-term debt, but this is kind of the equivalent on the asset side. Do we shift something into like, oh, it's the current portion of this long-term thing? We don't. We leave it as a.
So what is it classified as?
It just stays where it always has been.
On the balance, so what would it be classified as when we buy it?
I'm sorry?
So what would it be classified as when we obtain that asset?
Oh, this one, again, we're making assumptions, but this one probably would have been classified as a held to maturity investment, held to maturity security. 5 years ago, depending on whether the company had the intention to hold it to maturity. Otherwise, it would have been an available for sale security. Again, it would have been long-term unless they had specifically decided they're not going to hold it. For that period of time. But yeah, this would be a held to maturity security, long-term asset. Yeah. So there you go. That's the fun part. So I'd say about 3/4 of the people want to reclassify as current, and the other 4 did say let's leave it as non-current. But again, it's a tough question, and the answers are not readily available to just jump out at you. So when that happens, you do need to build a case for yourself. A couple of people actually in their email said something to that effect, that this doesn't jump out at me from the codification. I can't find a specific place in the code where this is addressed, but here's what I think based on this, and this. That's a great answer, right? That's a really good answer. So before we get into the meat of it, while we're talking about researching the code, the worst things that you could have done on this assignment, and again, this doesn't affect your grade, The whole purpose of us doing this was to give us something to talk about tonight. But the worst thing, the absolute worst thing you could have done, in my opinion, and about 5 or 6 or 7 people did this, and it made me mad. Do not cite Investopedia. Do not cite accountingcoach.com. You'll come out looking, you don't want to look like you
Of
don't.
course then. That's what I'm at now.
That's what you don't want to do, right? You don't want to cite Investopedia, Accounting Coach, and whatever else random Wikipedia website you did. I have no idea who did it off the top of my head, so I'm not calling anybody out. I don't know if anybody in here did that or not. It's fine. We're in here to talk about those kind of things. So I'm not ridiculing. I'm just saying that's something you don't do. Almost as bad, though, is not citing anything at all. Just saying, here's what the deal is, and then leaving it at that. And I'd say a lot of people did that. A lot of people did that. So, a lot of people are just like, hey, you're going to leave that as current assets because current assets are things that are converted to asset a year. Thank you. You don't want to do that. You need to tell why you're answering it the way you're answering. If you're, manager at the firm you're working at asks this question, it's probably not an easy question, right? Otherwise, they already know the answer. So they're not really interested in your opinion. They're interested in facts, right? Where did you find what you found, and why do you think that's the case? All right, so enough of that part. So how about us actually communicating this? There's a lot of things we can say. Let me pull up a little deal I've put together. Now, let me start by saying a whole lot of what we're talking about tonight, in fact, most of what we're talking about tonight is opinions that we can argue about, that we can discuss. Everybody has their preferences. It's just, there's no hard and fast rules here. This is just us considering things and talking about things, talking about what we like to do and what we hate to see, and that kind of thing, right? So don't take any of this as, oh, that's the rules, because there's really no rules. It's all opinionated type things. So in accounting research, or really any of our research, we're trying to figure out how to do things in an appropriate way. And then the other half of that is we need to document it. No matter what kind of research we're doing, we need documentation. Why? Because it creates an audit trail. You can share that documentation with auditors and how the judgment was made and why and what it was based on. It sets a precedent for the future, right? You may come across this again, like, hey, we did that before. We got it all written up and supported. So look it up and do it that way. Right? We're more efficient that way. If we don't properly document that, we gotta do it again, and then somebody else might do it and do it different, and then you're like, well, y'all did it this way before, why you do it this way now? And that's a problem, right? And then that kind of brings us into the whole, if we're ever questioned, we've got a nice neat summary of our rationale that can be forwarded to whoever's questioning. You never know who's going to question it, right? It may be tax folks, could be peer review folks, could be anybody. So with emails or memos, we have different ways to communicate things. Emails are good for quick things like kind of what we did, one little question. Here's some tips about an email. And you can kind of think about what y'all did as we kind of mentioned these tips. Keep it brief. That is super important. Nobody wants to read a bunch of mess. Don't waste a bunch of words talking about a lot of things that nobody wants to read about. People are busy. People have a short attention span. If they see 5 paragraphs, they're going to be like, oh, no, I'm going to read this. So keep it brief. Be as concise as you can, but do be complete, of course, in responding to whatever is being asked, right? As far as what y'all turned in, a lot of them were brief. I feel like a lot of them were brief because a lot of people were kind of lazy, but it worked in this case, right? Not all of them were brief, but a lot of them were brief. So that's good. Some of them were too brief, but some of them were really long. Yeah, it's a mixture.
What would have been an adequate response?
I've got one, and I'll give it to you in a minute. Yeah, we'll get there. I've got it right here. I chose what I thought was the best one. Restate the question. All right. Here's the biggest problem I saw with the ones that were turned in. They just started off and just answered something, and you know, people are busy, and the person who asked for this information probably forgot exactly what he or she asked for, and they're going to start reading in the middle of the thought that whoever is emailing started out in, and they're going to be like, I have no idea what they are answering here. So restate the question. That's a really good place to start. Hey, you asked me to research, and a lot of people started it out exactly like that. And that was great. You asked me to research whether this, and then go into it. But a lot of people didn't. You know, I've got everybody's here, and you know, we can kind of look at the first sentence and kind of decide, was this a good way to start? You know, so here's one that says, our company client has acquired U.S. Treasury notes 5 years ago for the purpose of an investment. That's the first sentence. So we're getting there. You know, that one is maybe going a little wordy. Here's one that says, here's what I found regarding your request on information concerning U.S. Treasury note classification. Not bad. It might need to jog memory a little more depending on how busy the person is. Let's see. After researching the content of the question, I've come to the conclusion that the U.S. Treasury notes can be classified as a current asset. Kind of starts out in the middle a little bit. Here's one I was reviewing the balance sheet we discussed on Thursday. We created a scenario in this one. Okay, nice. Yep, that's okay. In response to your question regarding U.S. Treasury notes classification, I would consider blah, blah, blah. So these are all good. It's kind of jogging the person's memory a little bit. You know, here's one that just said the U.S. Treasury notes purchased by the client as an investment should be considered a current asset. That's just the beginning right there. It's like, hey, done.
Well, that was the whole thing?
Well, there's two more sentences. Okay. That one wasn't quite enough. Just like, what are you talking about? And there's no citation or anything like that. Let's see. Here's one that begins. It says, the U.S. Treasury notes are maturing within the next year. You know, we're starting out in the middle of a thought. So we need to restate the question just to build that background or rebuild it and say, hey, you know, you asked me, here's a good one. You've asked me to research about a client's U.S. Treasury note that was purchased 5 years ago. That's a perfect beginning right there. You asked me to do this. That's not going to be a question of why are you emailing me this? Oh yeah, I asked you to do this. You asked me to research about a client's U.S. Treasury note that was purchased 5 years ago that is maturing in 2 months and whether it should be considered a current asset. That's a really good beginning. Restate the question. All right, I'll stop reading all of these. I don't know, that's not next. Yeah, be a little complete, you know, more complete in your beginning, restate everything. Another tip, include an excerpt from the authoritative guidance to support your response. Very few did this. This is a good thing to do. You know, yeah, it's good. It's definitely better than not doing anything to say, you know, ASC, these numbers states this. But then the poor guy's gonna have to be like, all right, let me go look that up and see what it says, you know. So, you know, we kind of want a one-stop shop, right? So what I thought was one of the very best ones did exactly that. And the statement is, I have included, you know, all right, you asked me what a good one was. Here's a good one. Here's a really, really good one. It says, Corey, I was able to find information on how to deal with treasury notes for your client as you requested. The question you raised falls under the topic of cash equivalents according to the FASB accounting standards codification numbers An investment must have an original maturity of no more than 3 months when purchased in order to meet the qualifications of a cash equivalent. The client would not be able to reclassify the treasury notes as current assets, regardless of the time until maturity, because they were purchased 5 years ago. I have included a snippet of the reference section below for further clarification. You don't have to look at it, but there it is if you want it. You don't have to look it up, but there it is. It's great. And then they say, please let me know if you have further questions or if more information is needed. That's perfect. It's great. You know, we got a good beginning. We answer it. We're very clear with our answers. Some of the ones that were turned in, I'm like, I'm not real sure what you're recommending on this. You know, some of them led you in one direction and then shifted gears and said, but I think, you know, it's like, blah, 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 I'm headed over here. And it's like, but, and really, we're not going to do it that way. I'm like, whoa. So then you're confused at the end. But a very clear statement of what to do on this. Was one of my favorites, and I really like this way of doing things. They highlighted within the email, you know, kind of like this, exactly the answer. So, you know, if somebody doesn't care about all the other mess, they can say, okay, there's my answer, and move along. It's a really good way to do things. Dr. Beaver does that a lot in emails. She'll have an email that needs a lot of information, but she'll highlight, here's what you really need to know, and it's great. So that's a really good way to do things, in my opinion. Use complete sentences. I saw some sentence fragments, guys. It's not a good thing to do. You lose credibility if you start using bad grammar. You lose credibility if you mess up your subject-verb agreement, and if you know, typos and all that kind of stuff. You got to be real careful about that. You made any assumptions in research of the issue, state what you assumed. A lot of people did that. That's good. Don't say I think or I feel. I did see a lot of that. It kind of, you don't trust them as much. I think this. I feel like this is the case. They say avoid exclamation points to keep a professional tone and include an offer to be of further assistance if you close it out. You know, these are some tips about emails. We could disagree with some of those. I'm not against using exclamation points. That doesn't bother me.
Kind of softens it up a bit.
Do what?
Kind of softens it up a bit.
Yeah. I guess, depending on what you're doing exclamation points on. You're going to jail.
Okay, all right, yeah, okay. That's a good point. That's a good point.
But no, you know, it's a friendly tone instead of a stiff, in a very stiff tone, right? So I don't know if I agree with that, but I guess it depends on who you're talking to. Well,
Like, it may depend more, because this is an intercompany one.
right?
I mean, you don't have to be, quote, as formal, right?
Right.
I mean, in here, to me.
Yeah, it would.
So maybe, yeah, if you're going to a client, yeah, you want it to look professional.
Right. It depends on who you're emailing. If I'm emailing Bunker, my email is going to be a lot different than I'm emailing Carnes, right?
Yeah.
It just will. Very different. And that's fine. And, you know, that gives us, you know, leads us into the, how do you start this? Is it Corey? Is it Mr.? Is it Doctor? Is it, you know, what do you call somebody? Again, it depends on what you're comfortable with. If you don't know what to call them, then err on the side of more formal, just so you don't offend somebody, right? Or you don't want to come off as overconfident and brash or whatever. Some people, you know, especially these doctor types are like, you will refer to me as doctor. I've had professors in the past who are that way. I'm definitely not that way. But there are some. They're not really here that I know of. They're super into that. But I've had them as instructors before. And on day one, they said, you'll call me Dr. So-and-so because I feel like I've earned that. You don't want to assume that you can call somebody something. You want to be sure. And you also have to pay attention to who's around you. And, you know, somebody might be like, oh, that was kind of should be calling that person doctor. So, yeah, but anyway, do what you're comfortable with.
It's interesting, like, you'll take the time to type up this really well-worded email, professional, and then the person you send it to within the organization replies back with doctor? Or
Yeah.
thanks?
Yeah.
Or yes. And you're just like, okay,
Right.
all right.
Yeah, you're right. But, you know, as far as the ones you guys turned in, some were very formal and some were, hey man, which
Yeah, I did that.
I know, it works, you know?
Was that okay or was that too far?
No, well, you were doing that addressed to me and you knew it was fine, so it's fine.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. If you were doing that in Dr. Carnes' class, you probably wouldn't have
No,
done it.
no, I wouldn't have, no.
So that's kind of the point. You know, it's like, you knew that was fine, so it's fine. Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe if they'd been like a partner of the firm, probably not.
Right.
But I didn't think that was the,
Yeah.
connotation.
No, I mean, you know, you could be like, hey, you dummy, you
Well,
should have known, you
okay.
know. And you know, I would be like, yeah, but,
Yeah, I got
you know, it's what you're comfortable with. Chats here. I think the PhDs have earned it to be called doctor. Yeah, I mean, if they want to be called doctor, absolutely. And that's the kind of thing you have to be aware of. If you are not sure, you probably should call them a doctor just because some people are like, I've earned it and I need to be called that. Some don't care. But yeah, you definitely need to know who your audience is. Okay. The memos, you know, these would be bigger type things. Kind of a standard format for them, but different from company to company. So you have maybe a template to follow there, but this will be a bigger deal where you're saying here, you know, background, relevant facts, blah, 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 flow charts if you needed, that kind of thing, bigger deals, right? Okay, so strategies for any written communication. These are the things that I have found to be really useful over the years, as I'm writing things. So you won't find any textbooks or any articles or anything that will argue with this first one here, and the second one, and the third one. Be explicit, be concise, be precise and specific. I don't think we could argue about any of that. Make your point quickly. That's good, right? The best article or the best emails that were turned in were, we just talked about the first sentence. You asked me to research whether blah, blah, blah. The best second sentences were, the answer to your question is this, and then go, right? Those were the best ones to me. Revisit the question, answer it, then go into the explanation. Don't make them suffer through all this stuff. All right, what's the answer going to be? And then you have to reread it and make sure I read that right. Tell them right up front. Don't go through this long, complicated introduction. You know, some, and this would be something for us to talk about, some began with, hey, so whatever, whoever, I hope you're having a great day. All right, what do y'all think? Is that a good beginning? Kind of a.
It depends on the day. If I've been having a bad day, that would be so heartwarming. But if it's just been like one of those, I'm trying to get stuff done,
Mm-hmm.
too much.
Point of view of someone writing an email, I would be really quick to do that. Be like, hey, hope you're having a great day, blah, blah, blah. Now, from the point of the view who's reading it, do you care if they start it that way?
It depends who it comes from.
Yeah?
Because like during my internship, certain people would say it, and I know that they weren't just saying it to like have an introduction,
Right.
but like they said it because like they genuinely mean it,
Mm-hmm.
which I feel like there's a reason they include it.
I often start them out that way, but I'm just sitting here wondering, should I? Do they care? Do they want to waste their time reading that? I don't know. I guess it depends on who I'm sending it to. Is it too generic? I don't know.
Also, I feel like it depends on what you're saying. So if you're like, hey, hope you're having a great day. Then you're like, sorry, something terrible happened.
Hope you're having a great
Then I
day.
hope you're having a great day.
IRS came back and said, you do in fact owe the $15,000.
Yeah.
Hope to see you soon. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
Maybe, like you said, you can make it, somehow make it more personable. It would
Yeah.
make, like,
hey, hope you had a great weekend. I'm glad such and such happened to you. That maybe if not as necessary.
Yeah,
Oh.
maybe so.
That's just an idea.
You know, the hope you have a great days tend to go in one ear out the other, but I remember one of the people on the accounting advisory council emailed me a few weeks ago and said, hey, I'm looking forward to our next meeting once we're able to resume after COVID. That stuck with me. And they go, I'm glad they missed our meeting, you know.
It's the audience. Like,
Yeah, right. Here. From a customer service point of view, appropriate. Someone else says it sounds too familiar and too non-professional. So yeah, we can have different opinions on it, right? I guess we would tailor it to whatever the situation is. I don't know. You know, I've had people in the past that I work with, I get emails from them several a day, and they would be like, hope you're having a great day with every one of them. Like, stop it. You know? Say what you say. So, you know, I don't know.
Like they copy and paste it.
Yeah, exactly.
I got
No, it's just like that was the same every time. It's like, okay, it's a good time today. Yep, still have a great day. Let's get on with it. Yeah. Just something to think about. I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not saying I don't do it. I'll do it as well. Hope Christmas break's going. I do that. So we're talking about being explicit. We've got a good example and a bad example. So a bad example of explicit versus not explicit. I'm writing to you to discuss the fiscal plan that you recently sent me to evaluate for you. My results can be summarized on the income statement that is attached. The results that I came up with, based on the information you gave me, indicate that your company will end up with a pre-tax profit of $37,250. Too much, right? I had to read way too much to get to the point there. Better is analyze your fiscal plan based on your data. Your pre-tax profit will be $37,250. See the attached, blah blah blah. That's better, right? We don't waste their time. We don't make them suffer through all this stuff to get to the main stuff, right? So be explicit. Be concise. This is important. Focus on what you have to say and delete anything that's not pertinent, anything that's too wordy. Make every word count. Bad example. As per your request. Did we need that? No. People love that though. As per your request. People love to write that. Nobody wants to read that. As per your request, I wish to inform you that an analysis of information indicates that the tax regulations in France do not appear to produce the same benefits as in Japan. If I read that, I'm like, you know, it's like per your request, blah, blah. I don't know, that kind of thing. Better. In conducting the analysis you requested, I found tax regulations are more beneficial in Japan than in France. It says the same thing, and it says it a lot quicker and a lot better, right? Bad example. This disclosure has the capacity of providing important information to creditors and investors. Yeah. We can all be honest that we might craft a sentence like that, thinking that's the way we need to write it, but we don't. Nobody wants to read that. Better is, this disclosure can provide important information to creditors. Simple. Don't try to sound all fancy. Nobody wants to do that.
bad examples of how they used to talk, like way back in country school. Like,
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
even wordy as another
It's
thing.
like on the Constitution and the Declaration. Yeah.
And then now we're just like, you get information, give it to me quick. I don't really care about
Yeah.
all this other stuff.
Yeah, it's way better. And, you know, a lot of times people like to try to sound smart, but in doing so, really don't sound smart at all. And here is my favorite example of all time. Let me pull this up. This was awesome. This is a real email that I got from someone not relating to classes here. But actually, I didn't get this. The person who got it forwarded to me, and I was involved in it. But let's see. Okay, here it is. This is like a good example of the worst things you can do. Per our telephone conversation yesterday, I am transmitting this email as a follow-up and to facilitate updates as to the status of my requests. Oh, it gets way worse. Listen to this. This is so great. As communicated telephonically, yeah. To illuminate the contents of the previous email sent to you, I have formally requested in writing and by telephone, blah, blah, blah. You told me that you would apprise and or update me on your progress via email at this address so that I would have proof, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's the best of it.
That telephonically with an F or a PH?
With PH, like telephone.
Okay.
Yeah. I contacted someone telephonically.
I don't know if I've ever heard that word.
Yeah, either. Like, this is priceless. And how much credibility does that person have to see? Like, God, it's idiot.
It almost sounds like one of those things you get after you like call and complain to a company,
Uh-huh.
and then they send you that back. Like, thank you for logging this call and was complaining.
So, you know, don't try to sound smart like that.
Well, one thing is like,
You
I
don't
don't want to try and sound smart, and then someone meet me and you're like, oh, okay, so you're not really that smart.
Right. That's the point. Yeah, you come off as in this person is trying. You're like, oh, these people at this place. I need to sound like I'm on their level. Blah blah blah. And I'm going to start using all these big words that nobody in the world ever uses. Right. So it's too much. The person must have been very angry. They were very angry. Yeah. Over a little thing. It was really funny. It just got sent to me because it was so funny. But, yeah, they were trying way too hard. They just needed one simple little thing, and then they go off into this big deal. Like, okay, we can give you this. It's not a problem. But yeah, don't overdo it. And, a lot of times people will get on like news conferences and police or whatever, like we apprehended the perpetrator who was attempting to abscond with his, talk normal. Yeah, we caught him. Okay, so yeah, be careful about that. I did notice a lot of per this and that kind of thing. And later on, I've got a whole list of things that we might consider avoiding versus, ways to substitute for that in a better way. We don't have to agree with all those, but it's kind of fun to talk through, and it makes us more aware as we're writing. Like, I don't need to use that; it sounds too stiff, too weird. Bad example. I would like to call your attention to the fact that our earnings last month were down 50%. Too much, right? Our earnings dropped 50% last month. Talk, be conversational, right? Nobody's going to be like, oh, that wasn't fancy enough of a sentence. Bad example. In spite of the fact that our costs rose by 10%, we were still able to keep our prices stable. A better example, although costs rose by 10%, our prices remained stable. Those aren't too different from each other, but the good example is obviously better, right? It's not as wordy, in spite of the fact that. Okay. Be precise and specific. Avoid sentences that may be ambiguous or too abstract. Write as simply as possible. Here's a bad example. An increase in an employee's rate of pay will not become effective prior to the date on which the employee has completed a minimum of 13 weeks actual work at his regular occupational classification. This is the kind of junk you see, right? People write mess like that. I don't know what the heck that means. And anybody else reading it's not going to know what the heck that means. And that's something you got to keep in mind as you're communicating with anybody. Are they going to understand this? Better example, employees must work at least 13 weeks at their regular job before receiving an increase in pay. Perfect. That's precise, it's specific, it's concise. Nobody's going to misunderstand that and come back and like, well, you said this and that. And I'm like, no, that's not what I said. I'm like, well, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. I should have written it better. Maintain a friendly, professional tone. Don't sound brusque. That's the word that they
You
use.
can find that one for me.
Brusque. What
Yeah.
is brusque? I don't know. I'm not good at defining words.
Okay.
I know what it means, but I don't know how to tell you what it means.
Like,
My daughter will ask me, "What does this mean?" And I'll just be like, and then I have to look it up because I'm bad at defining words. Look it up. Let's see.
Abrupt or offhand in speech or manner.
Abrupt or offhand in speech or manner. Abrupt. Bad example. We talked about exclamation points to sound friendly. This kind of goes along with that. Bad example. Our office is in receipt of your correspondence. That's not friendly at all, right? It's not unfriendly, but it's not friendly. Nobody wants to read it like that. Be advised. Okay. Please be advised to me is like nails on a chalkboard. I hate seeing that. Please be advised. It's just me though. Be advised. Think about it. It's like, hey, be advised that
right.
you didn't know this, but you better know this. So you need to be advised. I like that. Let's see what we got. Sounds like, oh yeah, we got a brusque, abrupt. Be advised sounds like you're about to get bad news. It does, yeah. And a lot of times, like, please be advised that we're dismissing early today. It may not be bad news, but please be advised. Oh no. Oh yeah, we're leaving early.
This thing is probably necessary, like you said.
Yeah, it's unnecessary. We don't need it at all. Oh yeah, be advised that several measures exist that can be instituted to bring about favorable resolution to your fiscal crisis. Sounds like the old telephonically guy, right? That's too much holiness there. Better. I like the better example. I received your letter, John, or hey man, depending on who you're talking to. I have some ideas to help you get through your fiscal crisis. I trust that person a lot more than the one in the bad example, right? Hey, we're gonna work this out. Instead of, hey, please be advised that we do have several. Bad example. Your recent letter has been received by this office. The writer will be handling your audit, so direct any further correspondence to her. I've seen stuff like that. It's so impersonal. Better is, we received your letter and appreciate your concern. I will be conducting your audit, so please feel free to call me if you have any questions or concerns. Way better, right? A lot of these overlap. Use a conversational style. Read your letter out loud to see if everything sounds like something you'd actually say, right? It's more of the same. Bad example. Pursuant to our recent conversation by telephone. I should have changed that to telephonically. Enclosed, please find. See, don't say enclosed, please find. An analysis developed to ascertain the feasibility of the utilization of straight line depreciation. I think we got the point across, right? Don't write mess like this. Better, as we discussed on the phone, I'm enclosing an analysis of whether you should use straight line depreciation. I like that person a lot better. I'm comfortable talking to that person. I'm not angry at that person for writing that. Nails on a chalkboard. Close on a positive, friendly note. A lot of people with the emails you sent didn't just stopped because it's like, we need to leave this as a current asset.
That's just done.
That is just done.
I get it.
A lot of people did that. Close your email, somehow. And furthermore, close it on a positive note and a friendly note. Bad example, please be advised that despite the fact that our proposal is delayed, someone from our office will telephone you next week with a complete plan. Better is, thank you for your patience. I apologize for the delay in sending you our proposal, and we'll call you Monday. That's better, right?
Okay. Who says we'll telephone? Like, I've never heard that.
People get all wrapped up in and they're wanting to sound all fancy and formal, and they'll say stuff like that.
I just didn't realize that was a phrase you could use.
Telephone you.
Yeah.
It's a little old fashioned, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
call you.
Yeah, I'll call you.
There you go. Or
These days, people don't really call people anyway.
text.
Text, email. I like that better. I hate getting telephone calls. I really do. And use the appropriate level of formality. It depends on who your reader is. We've talked about that. The AICPA, and this kind of goes along with our CPA exam topics that we were talking about in different classes. The AICPA put out some tips on effective writing on the written answers on the CPA exam. And they say they should have the following characteristics. Coherent organization, definitely, right? You definitely want logical order. That, tying that into our example, there were some that led me over here and then led me back over here and then finally ended up here. And like, wow, that was a ride to figure out what the answer was. Conciseness, complete thoughts, few words as possible. Clarity, specific, precise meanings of your words. Standard English, capitalization, spelling, grammar, punctuation. Somebody didn't capitalize one of their sentences. They started out with a lowercase letter at the beginning of the sentence. That tells me if we're in the real world that how much attention to detail has gone into answering this question if you don't capitalize the sentence. Right? I know you're supposed to capitalize it, but you didn't. How much time do you spend on this, right? Responsiveness to the requirements of the question. Directly address the requirements of the question. Demonstrate your awareness of the purpose. Don't go into this broad exposition on the general subject matter. Several were guilty of that. I made notes as I was reading some of these. I'm like, wow, there was a lot of stuff kind of off to the side in your letter there that we don't need all that. That's too much. There were a couple who went off on a completely different direction and answered some other question. So you definitely don't want to do that. Yeah, I forgot what it was, and I don't want to specifically call anybody out anyway, but it's like, okay, well, that is true if that was the question, but it was not the question. From the SEC's point of view, they've been very critical of this dense writing style that we've kind of been making fun of tonight, all this technical jargon and repetition and things in the prospectuses and things. So they have a release called the Plain English Disclosures that requires companies to use plain English in their cover page and their other things they've written up. And they also released a Plain English Handbook, how to create clear SEC disclosure, which specifies 6 principles for clear writing. They say use active voice. We'll get to that in a second. Short sentences. Big long sentences get overwhelming, right? Cut them down into shorter sentences. Everyday language, tables to present complex material, limited on the crazy legal jargon and things like that, and no multiple negatives. I think I have an example here in a minute on how confusing multiple negatives can be. And I pulled this quote from Warren Buffett in. Warren Buffett said he's given this tip to investors. I thought was interesting. He says that unintelligible footnotes in the financial statement package usually indicate untrustworthy management. If you can't understand a footnote or other managerial explanation, it's usually because the CEO doesn't want you to. Enron's descriptions of certain transactions still baffle me. So this is from Warren Buffett. So, you don't want to lose credibility. Well, that doesn't make sense. I don't trust this person. In the chat. So someone says, I thought this assignment was more of a BEC written communication practice rather than a research question, so that the correctness of an answer did not matter so long as you were on topic and answered the correct form. Yeah, that wasn't really the purpose of this one, but that's fine for what you did. It's not a problem. Here's a good this was from an old assignment we did before. It was a question about leases. So here was a good example of a written communication about a lease question that we used to do. It says, Corey, you asked me to research whether a lease with a bargain purchase option should be classified as capital or operating, right? Reminding them of the question, quick and easy, simple sentence. It says, given the client's past practices, I'm assuming, state your assumption because the question was a little vague, like our question. I'm assuming this should be evaluated from the lessee's perspective. However, let me know if that's not the case. ASC 840-10 provides the following guidance indicating that a bargain purchase option shall result in capital lease treatment. Right? You got the answer out there. Here's a snippet of the code if anybody wants to read it. They truncated some of the mess that doesn't matter. That's fine too. This isn't relevant, but okay, here's a section on that and that, but here's what matters, right? And then they kind of sum it up. A bargain purchase option is listed as one of the lease classification criteria, blah, blah, blah. Therefore, this will be treated as lease. So let me know if you need anything further. Thanks. That's good. You didn't waste any words. You're very clear, very concise, friendly. Got the job done, right? Okay, eliminating clutter, because this is the thing that we tend to be the most guilty about. This gives us kind of something fun to talk about and argue about. Some of these I don't agree with, but a lot of them I do. So the many accountants, we're kind of switch on this very stiff style when we're writing. If we're talking to somebody in person, we would never say to them, enclosed, please find, right? There's no reason for us to do this in our writing either. We've said it many times, clarity and conciseness is what we're wanting. So remove stuff that doesn't matter. It could be more words than necessary to get your point across. It could be throwing in phrases that add nothing to the communication, or worse, have very little resemblance to conversational English. So cluttered expressions that we can avoid and ways to get around them. Things that people are guilty of doing. Acknowledge receipt of. Many times. Better is we receive. Allow me to say that. You don't even need to say, allow me to say that. Just say it, right? It's cluttered. It's cluttering it up. Allow me to say that this. Just say it. They're not going to disallow you to say it. You're writing it. So. As the case may be, is terms you don't need. At the present time is too cluttered. Now is better, right? Attach, please find. Don't do it.
What about instead of actually say, please see attached?
Yeah, or I always do. I've attached. Yeah. Please see attached. Is that what
Yeah,
you
like
said?
just kind of like fill in what you guys say, then please see attached.
Yeah, yes, if you like. It's a little please see attached. You wouldn't say that in real life. So
You also wouldn't just be like, please see attached, like a hand up piece of paper.
Well, that's true.
It's
So I understand that, but at
Yeah.
the same time, some things in an email are going to be different than a real life conversation.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, but
So that you say, I have that, just leave it at
what if what if like, hey, I just sent you an email. Please see attached my so-and-so. You wouldn't do that. You say, I just sent you an email. If you like sent the email and you saw him in the hallway right after you hit him, oh, I just sent you an email. Please see attached my, you wouldn't do that.
that. Okay.
You say, I attached the thing you need.
A lot of times I just say like February 20 gas charges, and then for the whole entire email, please see attached.
I mean, it's whatever you're comfortable with. Like I said, we don't agree with all these and we can argue all of them. I've gone through this junk so much that I have trouble saying things like that. I'm very careful. I'm just like, I attach this for you. But that's just me. There's no rules here.
But did you come up with all these?
No, I mean, they're not all from one source, but I forgot where they all came from. I just kind of collected them over time. Sometimes I'll see emails and add new ones to it. For example, if I add to do more. Yeah, I got more to add right here. We'll get there. Yeah, I always just say I've attached this. Let's see. Based on the fact that very cluttered, right? Because due to the fact that saying enclosed, please find, way better would be I have enclosed. They say enclosed is, I don't like that either. That doesn't sound good. I left it just so we can say they're not right about everything. I don't like that. Herewith, please don't say herewith.
That's one of those things I probably would have said.
You would have said herewith.
Yeah, like whereas, and as much.
Whereas it is bad, but herewith, you wouldn't say that in real life.
I actually lied.
Really?
Yeah, I talk weird, man.
I've never heard you say herewith.
I mean, maybe I say wherewith.
Wherewith?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that even a
I've
thing?
never heard that before.
You're making up your own words.
Maybe I am. I do that too. I think you do that. I'm mad about something.
In accordance with your request, very stiff. With regard to, kind of on the stiff side, right? In the event that it's too much, permit me to say, please be advised is my least favorite thing. Please be advised. I think I already said that. And then they say prior to, they don't like, but there's nothing wrong with prior to. I'd say that. So I would not say pursuant to your inquiry, though. As you requested is better, but still not great. I would think I would say you requested. Huh?
Like you asked.
I mean, yeah, whatever.
I'm pursuant to your inquiry.
I probably-
They asked me to do something, so like you asked me to do.
I would probably just kind of do like with our assignment here, like you asked me to do this, here it is. Make that part of my opening and reminder of here's what this is all about. Thanking you in advance. What do y'all think about thanking you in advance? You see it a lot. I remember being a sophomore in college and my professor said, don't thank people for anything in advance. That is stupid. Okay.
But there is a trick, when you say thank you in advance, you kind of push the person to do whatever you ask.
Oh, so now they're gonna be like, oh, they're manipulating me. I don't know.
It seems a little presumptuous.
Presumptuous is a good word, yeah. Okay, I can see that.
Because what if they did a bad job? And you're not gonna thank them for it.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you ask them to go and mow the yard and they go and mow your neighbor's yard. I mean, why would you thank them for that?
I have seen emails that come through and it's like they ask you for stuff or they're asking a big group of people for stuff.
Uh-huh.
And they're just like, thanks in advance. And then like they're like, good, like thanks.
I mean, if somebody thinks too long about it, they could come up with a whole lot of reasons they don't like it, right? You know, like, oh, you too lazy to thank me afterwards? I'm sure I do. You know, come back, say, hey, good job, thank you, instead of, well, go ahead and get my thank you out of the way now and go ahead, go do this, you know?
That's a good point.
I don't think anybody's really thinking this hard about that kind of thing.
Probably. Probably most people are going right over it, not even thinking.
Not paying a bit of attention. But now, after we've talked about it, and now after I talked about it way back when with my professor back in the day, I never ignore it. I'm always like, oh, thanking me in advance, huh?
Yeah, so now we're gonna see that, it's gonna catch our eye.
It will. Yeah. And you'll be like, I don't know if I like that.
Think back to that Monday night, county research, when we were talking about the cable, we were talking about that one day.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's like, people have different opinions about that. Oh, Mr. Jackson, sorry. Someone says they like please see attached. Yeah, I mean, it's all preference. Please see attached is the worst thing in the world. It really isn't. I just always say I have attached. But we are in receipt of. I think we can all agree that's too much. We received is better. With the exception of, I have no problem with the exception of. That's very conversational to me. Fine. Tell you what I don't like though is above mentioned. You probably like it.
I do, yeah. Like, cause like, to me, it helps clarify.
Yeah.
It's like, it wouldn't just be like, what we talked about earlier, it said the above mentioned, it's a very specific place, and I don't know, that's the missing person.
If there are like several emails
Uh,
and you're like responding to an email and you're like forwarded an email and then you're supposed to respond to the email forwarded, like please see attached,
Mhm.
like above mentioned.
Yeah.
I feel like that's used.
I guess it could be fine.
I'll just say before mentioned, though.
I don't think I would ever do it. Someone says I try not to include too much of I in the email. What would you do instead? Just so I can follow you better.
Sometimes I use.
More third person than first person?
Yeah, sometimes I use like we as like a team, as like I respond
We,
as part of the
as a
team.
group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that would certainly be appropriate if there's a team of people.
I guess the company.
Yeah, like the company, if you answer in the company's name.
Right, yeah. We,
It's not your decision, you talk that with somebody who's not like you're like taking the decision, final decision.
Yeah. There were a couple that got turned in. I don't remember if they got it right or wrong, but I remember thinking, they're like, I consulted with so-and-so about this and we determined this. I'm like, if they got that wrong, they just threw their friend under the bus. I don't remember if they got it right or wrong, but you can overanalyze anything, I guess.
and sadly, a lot of people do these days, like, they look way too much into what people say.
True, yeah. Very true.
That's.
Oh, no. Somebody said, I felt like I was overthinking the assignment. There's no such thing as overthinking in here. I think we've made that pretty clear tonight. We're overthinking everything tonight. Nah, there's no such thing as overthinking. Okay, where are we?
I'm getting, it's down. Is that just something we in the South say, or is that an actual thing?
What did you say?
Thunk it?
Thunk it?
Yeah,
You better not send an email saying about thunk it.
okay.
That's
All
not
right,
real.
I just had to make sure. I couldn't remember. It's like, that's stuff I say in conversation, but,
Yeah, I probably wouldn't use
okay.
Bad.
No.
grammar and words that aren't real.
Well, it was one of those things where I couldn't remember. It was,
I wouldn't have thunk it.
yeah.
I wouldn't have thunk it, but these actually are
Yeah, I mean,
named as long-term assets.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll have good credibility with that.
That almost sounds like a double negative in a way.
Wouldn't have thunk it. Yeah, that would probably be taking familiarity and conversational a little too far, right?
Gotcha. Well, I just couldn't, that's a genuine thing, I couldn't remember the word on.
Oh, you just got sassed online too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, they said, are you trying to get a reputation of hillbilly?
I can't help it.
Oh,
That's a very common phrase.
thunk it?
Yeah.
Who does bump it?
Yeah, but,
Like I don't say it, but like I've heard it a lot.
oh yeah, everybody know what you mean. but
Yeah.
I got it.
I can't think of
Well,
Hey, you're like, what?
I just thought that was
good as one word or two words.
I can't think of any situation where you would write that in an
No,
email.
I'm just saying,
Well, that's
it's
good to know.
it's a common word.
I don't think I have before, but
Good,
but I don't use it.
especially mixed with like herewith,
Wherewith?
wherewith,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thunk it, but pursuant to the,
Yeah.
like, this person doesn't know where to go with this email. All right, where are we at?
Absolutely.
Absolutely essential. That is redundant. Right. It's either essential or it's not. It can be absolutely essential. Although my wife and I argue all the time, and I usually argue just to get on her nerves, but she wonders if something can be very unique. Like, you can't be very unique. Unique is unique. I'm like, you can be very unique. And I'm like, very unique. They're weird. This person's just unique. They're a little different. Guys are crazy. I see the point.
I see both sides.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do too. But
It's fun to argue.
oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'll say it. Oh, man, very unique. Man. 7-year-old says the most best. Yeah, that would be a little redundant, but the most best.
Like, you could also say it's best or unique, you know, be very or very best. Or most
The
best.
very best. Yeah, that's
Like,
redundant.
It's already best.
Yeah.
How can you say, I mean, it's not best then, you know?
My dissertation chair at Ole Miss crossed out very a few times in my dissertation. Like, you don't need this. It either is or it isn't. You don't need very. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I didn't think about that. You know, things you just don't think about until somebody's like, you don't need this. I'm like, yeah, you're right.
It's probably one of those things too, like you use it in conversation, but then nothing else of it.
Mm.
Then you go and put the paper and they're like, oh.
Yeah, he's like, you don't need this. What's the difference between this and very this? I'm like, nothing. You're right. Yeah. That was one of his things that bugged him. Everybody's got something that bugs them. I cannot keep up with where we're at. What is it?
Activate.
Right here. So I mean, I can't see. I can see they're going on that, activate. Sounds like you're turning on a robot or something.
Or no?
Advise, again, is,
My least favorite sentence in emails that I get
Uh-huh.
is please advise.
please advise.
I'm like, just please ask me a question.
I'm with you. Yep, please advise.
That's the one that gets under my.
Yep, please advise. Just, it really sounds aggressive. It comes off as aggressive.
I do a lot. I didn't know that. I thought Lolo was polite.
Well, that's the thing about emails.
That's not.
That's the thing about emails. You know, you could say to me right now, can you advise me to this? And I wouldn't think anything about it. But if you email and like, advise me to this, I'm like,
Okay.
you know, you can't, that's the thing about email. You can't hear somebody's tone. Yeah. So
How would you use that instead?
what?
Advise.
Advise.
Like advise.
Please advise.
I advise. So why don't you just say, I'll do this instead of I.
Like I'll get stuff from students. It's like, I need another elective this time, but this conflicts with my material. Please advise.
Oh,
Please advise.
oh, okay.
Where you come off telling me to advise. Of course, I'm your advisor. So that was a bad example of this.
I feel like that's where a lot of the word comes from,
Please advise.
the connotation of it.
Maybe.
I wish I just said, like, should I do this or should I do this? Or is there a different option?
Right, that is better.
Like,
Yeah.
what are
Should I
my
do this or should I do this? You know, I'll get a question about like
Okay.
a homework question. It's like, I was confused about this. Please advise. I'll advise when I'm ready.
Oh.
And I feel like that person wants you to do all the work.
Yeah.
Instead of showing that, hey, I kind of, I don't know what to do.
Right.
I'm kind of with you on that one, I think.
We don't have to agree on all of them.
I just think it's like, please advise, like, I want you to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Like,
No, you're wrong.
Okay, that's fine. I can accept that.
well.
We don't have to agree on all of these,
Remember that
but we
for
do have to
sure.
agree on this one.
We do.
Yeah.
You're disagree.
But I feel like it depends on the situation.
I think you just don't like the word.
Me? I don't. I don't like people telling me to advise. I don't know. Yeah, it's just one of those that I don't like. You're right. And everybody has those.
Yeah.
For sure.
So then I'll make sure that, right, something like that.
So would you rather just have someone say, tell me what to do? Can you tell me what to do?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
No, please tell me what to do.
Please help me.
Just tell me.
Please. Yeah. Please advise. Please advise still doesn't sound nice though. I don't know.
Does it sound polite? What if they say, can you please advise me?
I still don't like it. It's too stiff. Leave advise out of
He's okay.
it.
He's got it right. He does not like.
Write your-
Every instance, you're like, I just don't know.
Write your email, Control F, search for advise. If it's there, delete it. It needs to go.
So what about the word advice?
Can you give me some advice? That's better.
Wow. Okay.
That's different. You're not.
I mean, We're splitting hairs.
I mean, you're telling somebody to do something instead of asking them.
Okay. So what they said, can you give me some advice?
That's better. That's more friendly.
Okay.
Again, that's all opinions, by the way. Every bit of this is.
This is one of those things. Okay. All right.
Let's see, some.
Back to the debate, though, it's fine.
Oh, yeah, I love this. Someone, yeah, this is a good point. Someone online said, you just have to read the room. Emails depend on the culture of the company. I can email my boss and some customers and be super short because I know he's not going to read a longer email. I've never emailed an exec and use the same tone. That's very true. I said my email to Bunker would be way different than Collins. I wouldn't second guess anything I put in an email to Bunker, and he wouldn't hate it. We know each other so well. I'll be like, hey, blah blah blah. No. Collins would be different, right? Someone says, please advise sounds too much like a command. That's kind of where I'm at on that. Somebody said true that to something. I'm assuming it's true that to something I said. It just would have to be. So
It's true that thing to say, 'cause I said that a lot.
I wouldn't do it in an email to
Okay.
someone.
No, I mean, casual conversation.
Casual conversation. You can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Man, she just clarified that it is not a true that to anything I said.
Oh.
Wow.
And you're cheering. Come on. What is everybody against?
I don't know what I said, so.
Oh, no, it's not to you. It was to,
Okay.
haha.
Yeah,
Man.
I was like, I'm gonna talk.
I mean,
I did.
can you make that a little bit bigger?
The chat? I don't know. Let's see, I doubt it. Oh, I can make,
Oh, but they're back on that.
I can only make one at a time.
You can't expand the size of the box.
I can do that.
Whoa,
Um,
I'm just like,
I don't
just like
think,
the corner, and then pour it out.
Why was that?
you want this bigger?
Oh, that
Oh.
doesn't
Change, yeah.
You
Okay,
have to do it to each message.
okay, then it's not working.
Yeah, well, I can,
It's not that big a deal. You're not, I'm not even this complicated.
there's nothing complicated. No. Thank you for keeping class entertaining. I love doing this class. It's so much fun. It's goofy fun and useful too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, where are we at? Absolutely essential. Well, we already did that. Actually, we did aggregate. I mean, we're accountants, so we may throw that word and not feel bad about it, but
So is it aggregate or aggregate?
either.
Those two.
Yeah. Well, okay, you're probably right. It's like the aggregate of, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what does it change when you use it differently?
One's a
Does it
verb,
mean more
one's a
change?
noun. Aggregate. I guess you could use it as a verb or a noun.
Like if you say aggregate, be a noun, and you say aggregate, it'd be like a verb.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of that piece, though. When people say envelope and they mean envelope. My goodness, that is so frustrating.
Your pet peeve is when
That's
somebody
mine.
means envelope, but they say envelope.
Right.
I've
You
never-
ever heard that? Oh, man, people say that. I'm like, no,
I need
you're
a-
not giving me a hug now. You're giving me a piece of paper.
That's hilarious. All right. Oh, man, where are we at? Along the lines of, it's a little wordy, but not the end of the world. Anticipate, I would have a problem with using anticipate. It's real life conversational to me. As per your request, I hate per anything. That's another one of my hates. Per, bleh, don't like it. As you requested, would be better. Assist versus help, there's nothing wrong with assist versus help.
That's weird. Could you delete that one?
We gotta leave them in there just so we can like, they're not,
Well, okay, all right. Yeah. I understand that, my bad.
we can disagree with this. At all times versus always. I see the point there, that's too wordy, funky. At this point in time, I'll probably use that. Conversational to me, I would say that in real life. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. At this time versus now, no problem with that. Attempt versus try, there's no problem with that. I think I put all these together, that I have absolutely no problem with. Commence, versus begin. Okay, now we're getting a little fancy. We will commence work.
No.
That's too much. Stop trying to sound smart. Communicate versus tell. There's nothing wrong with that to me. Completely eliminated versus eliminated. That's redundant again, right? Like, it's either eliminated or not. If it's not completely eliminated, then you would need to say it's mostly eliminated. Comprise. It's a little fancy. Constitute. A little fancy. Discontinue. I don't have a problem with. So, due to the fact that, that's too much. During the time that, a little wordy. Earliest convenience is something a lot of people use. What do y'all think?
I like it.
Yeah,
It's not
it's like
horrible.
when you get to, you know?
This one, I disagree with their good one. If somebody told me to do something promptly, I would get mad.
What?
Like, look out now.
So that's like doing front work.
If they, especially if they please advise me to do it promptly. Doubly mad. Someone said I disagree with communicate versus tell. I agree with that. I agree with you. Communicate versus tell. There's no problem. You cannot tell something in an email. Communicate's fine. There's nothing wrong with communicate. Yeah, with this one though, I completely disagree with them. I would use their bad example as the better example.
But it depends, if you say, I'll promptly answer for like, you know.
Oh, well, yeah, if you're saying I will do this
asking,
promptly,
but telling.
that's a good point. That may be how they meant it. If you're saying please do this at your earliest convenience, is usually the way you see that. So that kind of led me down that road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I would not say I will do this at my earliest convenience, because then I'm putting you off.
Probably a contextual thing.
Yeah, it is.
Depends on situation.
It's a good point. Yeah, if I'm talking about myself, I probably will say I'm going to do this promptly.
Well, no, I'd say I did, but I probably wouldn't say. promptly.
Yeah, quickly would be more conversational than promptly. You're right.
And again, it depends who you, email.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, promptly is just one of them weird ones.
Effort versus work. I have no problem with effort versus work. They're both conversational to me. Exercise care. That's a little too much. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a better word.
It's one of those things too, it's hard to know what it means. Like I don't know, for me, it's exercise care, like you can go work out and then care.
I don't know. I think it's like, you asked me if you should do it. I think you should exercise care in reporting it this way. Then I'm being kind of jerky to you.
I would reply back what you mean by exercise. Because you can interpret
It's
that.
better, I think, to say you need to be careful about, well, that's still a little aggressive though. You need to be careful about this.
Yeah.
A guy I used to work for, when someone would ask a tax question, if they could do, can I deduct this or can I do it this way? He would say, he would do this. He'd be like, jail. He would hold three fingers over like, no, that'll have you doing this.
I don't get it.
Bars, jail.
Oh,
That was his goofy answer. Like, oh no, that would be.
oh, okay, okay. I've never seen that before.
It was just his goofy thing. I always got a kick out of it. He would do that to us too. And we were asking questions like, oh no, you can't do it that way. That'd be, you'll be jail. He was a funny guy. Okay. Facilitate versus, someone said I feel more like a nurse or a doctor saying exercise care. That's a good point. Facilitate, a little fancy. Failed to versus didn't. Failed to is a little bit,
It's people saying
I was
that.
gonna say, I feel like facilitate could be like to facilitate a project. You wouldn't say to like ease or simplify. I don't think of it
yeah.
like alternative words.
Facilitate versus simplify. I feel like either of those would be fine. Facilitate's actually a pretty good word.
I feel like those have different meanings.
They do have different meanings.
Probably should do more like help.
Help.
Instead of facilitate, I mean, help.
This will
To
speed,
advise.
this will speed things up. What did you say?
To advise.
Someone said failed to is very abrupt. That's a good way to put that. Failed to is kind of a little in your face.
Unless you're talking about yourself, like, oh, I failed to say that part of it.
Yeah, but then you're making yourself sound like a failure.
It happens.
It does
sometimes.
happen, yeah.
I use it.
I'd use it too. I'm sorry, I failed to do that.
Yeah,
That sounds a little more apologetic than, I'm sorry, I didn't do this.
right.
I'm sorry, I failed to do this. I won't.
It sounds like you're taking acknowledgement of the
Yeah.
failure and trying
I
to
agree.
correct it or something.
Take responsibility.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to go and say, hey, you failed to do this.
You know, that's a little hard. Or bruh.
But you didn't, hey, you didn't do this, that's kind of, kind of accusatory. Like, you didn't do this. So there's probably a better way than that.
Rephrase it into a question like, can you go back and look and see?
Double check to make sure you do, yeah, that's good, put it on them. Yeah, that's good. Few in number is redundant. For the purpose of is wordy, or the reason that is wordy. Furnish. I
That's
mean,
weird. Like you're gonna put more furniture in there?
please furnish.
So, I don't want it to be confusing, you know?
You're right. Yeah, that's not.
There's alternatives to send or give.
Please give me, yeah.
Yeah.
That's-
Furniture, get
That's
it.
just, I don't know.
I get it.
Please furnish your
It's
bank
just a weird, we
reconciliation.
provide, like,
Yeah.
Please send. Yeah,
Yep.
that'd be better.
Yeah.
I.e., I probably throw IE in the emails every now and then. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. In advance of, wordy, in all cases, is a little redundant. In as much as, sounds like you already raised your hand.
Yeah.
You like to get fancy with all these combined words herewith and in as much as.
I think what it is I don't like saying a lot of words, so I just try and smash as much together as I can. All at one time. Like Orta.
It's efficiency for
You
you.
ever say Orta? You ought to.
Orta?
Orta.
No.
Okay. All right, see, I just like, put it all together.
you're gonna start sounding like Kevin from the office. Start, you want to,
Yeah.
you know, like how he uses like keywords and none of them make sense.
Oh, okay, well, I try to make sense. Apparently I'm not, so I'm not too quiet.
In behalf of. Then you get into the whole argument, what is it, in behalf or on behalf?
On.
That's what I think. I always say on behalf of. I've heard people say in behalf of. Oh, yeah. So then you
use it a lot.
Huh?
On behalf, I use it.
use on behalf of, yeah. Yeah, I use that a lot too,
How do you use that in behalf of?
interchangeably. I've heard people use it. Instead of saying on behalf of this or somebody, they say in behalf of.
It sounds like the person's dead.
Yeah. That sounds like an executive.
Sounds like a person's dead. Oh,
On behalf of just sounds like they can't be here.
man. Yeah. On behalf of sounds like they can't be here. In behalf of sounds like they're dead. Is that what you're saying?
Like in behalf of like a foundation or something? but,
Yeah.
Like, it's still on behalf. I don't know.
Yeah. Of course, you could remove all of that and just say for. That's the point, I guess. In many cases, in most cases, I like that better. I like that fine. In most cases, that's better to me than usually. Sounds more conversational. Initiate versus begin in terms of, in the amount of, in the case of, in the event of, in the neighborhood of.
I don't
It's all
like
too many words, I guess.
Really?
This is kind of get you all around about.
In view of the fact that was way too much. It is my understanding that does sound very clunky. It should be noted that sounds aggressive to me. Maybe say omit that. Say, instead of saying make a purchase, say buy. That's stupid. I don't see why you would distinguish between those. Modification, they like change better. Yeah, whatever. Optimum instead of best.
I see
That's what I think.
Y'all thinking of Transformers? Optimum's a little fancy, I guess.
Yeah, but it's something to break up best. Like you just use best all the time, then you just use optimum. You're just like, man, that's top quality. Top shelf, you know? Okay, I guess so.
I feel like they
Some
kind of
still.
have different meanings. Like best is best, the optimal.
It's like,
Optimum is,
Efficiency.
almost best.
Like optimum efficiency, but not like, you don't say the best efficiency.
Yeah.
It's not like necessarily that it's
You
the
say
best,
the efficient,
but it's.
most efficient.
you say the most efficient, but I don't know.
Optimum is best in this case. Which case?
I think it's supposed to be funny.
Oh, gotcha.
I could be wrong, but that was my,
Particular case. Past history, people use that a lot. That's redundant. History is past.
I've never, I say that.
I see it, yeah. Okay, I have seen this and I don't know how to say it in words, so that means you shouldn't write it either. Is it annum? I've seen it. I hate it.
Never know what it meant.
Per year.
I think that's more, English.
Yeah, maybe so. Period of time is redundant. Pertaining to, yeah, it's not that bad. There's please be advised again. They don't like it. Instead of presently, they say now. I don't see why presently is not okay. Prior to, they don't like. I don't see any problem with that. Procure is a little fancy. Get would be better. I guess. Nobody knows, like, I have procured unless they're just being silly.
Unless they work in procurement.
Unless they work in procurement, I did think about that, yeah, but even then, I don't know.
Weird.
I wouldn't use the word get though. I need to get. Like,
I'll say I would.
What would you?
Maybe depends on industry. Some industry.
Oh, I got it.
A lot.
I got it, but I wouldn't use it in an email. I get.
I think I'd just say a purchase.
Yeah.
I mean,
I see what you're saying.
unless it's not something you're purchasing. If it's something you need to run.
Unless it's someone like saying, procure this, you can just say, get this.
Yeah.
If you're sending to someone. Go and procure the coffee maker, go and get the coffee maker.
Go get your coffee maker.
Yeah, go get, I'm sorry.
Please.
Please.
I'm sorry.
Please be advised that I need coffee. Procure it.
I'm gonna start putting that in all my email lists.
You are,
Look at
aren't you?
Audrey. That was Macy that said that.
Oh, sorry.
But I looked at Audrey at the beginning of this and I was like, I'm gonna start using all of these.
See, that's the thing. We're gonna have assignments due, and it never fails that some joker is gonna be like, please attach, please find just be a jerk.
Please be advised.
Please be advised that I am turning in my assignment.
No, no, you
Or
should be
send
there.
it
For sure.
You know what? Y'all can do that in here to me. I don't mind. If you're being funny,
We're doing it on
It's
purpose.
good now.
I'm taking the lesson.
you're gonna say, please find herewith my assignment. Oh, man.
I'm smiling a lot. My cheeks are hurting.
The undersigned, I've seen it, it's a little, through the use of, a little wordy, I guess. Here's some of your words, thereon, thereof, thereto.
Daily.
I knew it.
Really?
There too.
Probably, yeah.
Thereto.
Maybe not there too. Thereof though, most definitely, and thereon.
No, when did you ever use this word thereon? What does that even mean?
That's what I was about to say. I don't even know what you're trying to say when you use
I
that.
couldn't use that in a sentence.
Thereon, like continuing kind of,
From now on, kind of.
pretty much. Thereon, thereof.
Oh, somebody once said they have a procurement department and they say procure. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, your procurement department, that's probably what you would say. Because that's your job is to procure things.
Yeah, makes sense. Maybe for us, like maybe for accountants, it is not, doesn't really make sense, but for say, for the companies like that one, they have a procurement department.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on industry.
Yeah, it does. It depends on where you're at.
And if you're talking to the client, because you wouldn't say, I need to procure this, like.
You need to procure this by the end of the year.
See, but you don't use get either, I need to, I don't know.
No, that's too.
So like, say you're giving tax advice and,
Required.
you know, there's this
Oh, that's-
advantage to them getting something by the end of the year. How would you say that? You need to procure this equipment by the end of the year?
I need your receipt.
You need to, no, you're telling them they need to procure. I just say you need to purchase, or you need to buy, or you need to
Obtain.
obtain if it's not something they're buying.
Because you're not just getting it.
Well, I mean, if it's, yeah, I guess.
See, it,
Well, it depends on how close you are to your client, because there were some who were just like, hey, I need to get your month end statement for money.
Yeah,
Receipt, I need to-
yeah, it definitely depends on the situation. Somebody says they've used moreover quite a bit. Moreover, a word that you would use?
Yeah.
Yeah. Moreover, how would you use
So
moreover?
nobody else uses these words?
No.
I said daily is an exaggeration.
I don't think I would know how to use some of these words.
Moreover.
Moreover.
Not
Therefore, I would use, yeah.
Not there too.
There too, no.
I don't know what that.
Moreover, I'm not sure how I could use it correctly.
There too. I think how I would use it there too.
In addition to,
It's more, yeah. But
I mean, I don't know.
see, I don't know.
Not all.
Well, I feel like if you're writing a big something, and you've already said in addition to this, and then in the end, when you're kind of summing it up, you get out moreover, blah, 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 blah.
See, I wouldn't know if I used it right or not. I'd have to go with something else.
Maybe it's, like, if you use it, then it's probably, but then again, who else?
Oh.
Now that I'm talking to all of you, I'm not gonna use these.
See, that's the thing.
Like, I know not to use it in conversation, like, oh, and nobody else. uses
Using
it.
that would be like writing with a semicolon. You're not sure if you did it right, so you just rewrite it in the two sentences to make sure you got it right.
For you.
I like using semicolons.
All this stuff I do depends on the culture.
Yeah, it definitely depends on.
So, like, even those that say really bad, in some places it could be a requirement, you know?
Moreover takes the place of therefore, however.
moreover,
Moreover, it
the blanket,
just doesn't roll off. It doesn't come out of my mouth very well. I don't feel confident in my use of it to say it.
But I feel
It's
like
kind of like
if you can use it,
If you can use it, yeah, it makes sense.
leads to this.
Yeah. It could be something that would begin a sentence. Moreover, I still don't feel like I'm
I
using
feel
it
like
right.
it just sums it up, like if you're trying to sum something up,
If you're trying to sum something up, moreover is,
this.
moreover, it just doesn't work.
Like
I don't
as a
know.
conclusion, yeah. Instead of in conclusion.
Instead of in conclusion. Moreover.
I've read that a lot.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that it's used a lot. I just don't know.
There too is like, it leads to this.
See, I can't use there to. There to means what?
It's like, it rained today, there too, it's gonna be the ground.
No,
That makes no sense to me.
that made me uncomfortable.
It made her uncomfortable. It rained today, there too.
That is therefore.
Oh,
It makes sense.
Therefore.
There too.
Therefore.
They don't use it.
Oh, y'all are great.
To that, for that place.
To that, for that.
Okay, well, there we go. We can add more to it, but always proofread. That was something I saw that a lot of people could have benefited from proofreading the emails that they sent as the assignment. There was one where someone had started writing it one way and then turned around and wrote it a different way, but both phrases were in there, and it was, it's like proofreading would have caught that. Look for obvious error, look for word omission, look for bad subject verb agreement, and capitalization that should have been there, and commas that should have been there, and things like that. A lot of this is used in very lawyerly type communication. They do that a lot. You're right. So read through first for obvious things, and then read through a second time, line by line, for accuracy. A lot of people recommend reading it backwards, not, the last sentence first, and that way you don't get hung up with the flow of things. You're just looking at each sentence individually.
Like the multiple choice in the CPA test. Start with the last question.
Start with the last question. Yeah, I do. It mentioned something about active voice earlier. I think the AICPA or the SEC one mentioned that was a good thing. Here's examples of bad use of that. The opposite of active voice is passive voice. So a bad example would be a determination has been made that the statements are in violation of GAAP. Okay, that's a bad way of saying that. Better is the auditors have determined that the statements are in violation. Bad example, if reversing entries are used, the possibility of bookkeeping errors is reduced. A better example is more direct. Using reversing entries reduces the possibility of bookkeeping errors. That's what they mean by use active voice. And then the things that will just absolutely destroy your credibility because people get so mad about them are these. Your versus you apostrophe RE. People get so offended if you mess that up. That's just the way people are. And they'll hit you with that little asterisk. And, thanks, jerk. Mistake, sorry. Misused apostrophes, they get about as mad about that. There.
This is apostrophe, like what?
Oh, people do it all the time. They make something possessive that isn't possessive at all. Oranges for sale, oranges apostrophe S for sale.
Okay.
I don't know why I thought of that, but yeah, people do stuff like that. Oh yeah, so be careful with that. There versus there, the different uses of that. Be careful. Affect versus that is the one I see probably most often in our little realm. Affect is a verb, effect is a noun. Blank and I versus blank and me. Be careful about that.
What's
It depends on how you're using it. Most TV shows and movies screw this up. Most people are always automatically think they need to say blank, he and I, in all cases, or she and I, or so and I. It depends on where you use the sentence. You and I are talking about this. I'm talking about this with, I wouldn't say you and me, that would be incorrect. You and me are talking about this.
I don't know if I ever said me. What would you use me? Like maybe like a couple of nouns, like.
So I could say that you were in class with Caleb and me. That would be, it wouldn't be you were in class with Caleb and I.
Oh.
And the easiest way to figure it out is drop the first part of it. And you were in class with me.
I will completely rewrite a sentence if I can't figure out which one is the correct way.
I'll just change it.
Yeah, the best way to do it is drop the so-and-so and part of it and just see if it reads correctly with the last, with the me or the I, if the other part wasn't there. Got lots of comments on this. I always have my mom proofread my assignments. If I have incorrect grammar, she furnishes me with a grammar lesson. My wife has read everything I've written, dissertation. She read the whole thing and checked it for grammar. She's very grammar conscious. She's the type who will be watching a TV show and somebody will say so-and-so and I incorrectly. She'd be like, so-and-so and me. I'm like, watch it.
I guess I just do that. I don't worry about it. But I wouldn't say like me, like at the beginning, like me does this. That is
Right. Well, you may naturally know how to use it right, but a lot of
but I definitely say I at the end.
no matter what.
Maybe not no matter what I've said it multiple times. I
So
would say it in a sentence. Do it with I. I don't know why. I feel like it's fine. So it's not. Do it with me. Do it without. You see what I'm saying?
so it kind of naturally makes sense to
I guess my head messed up, man.
I should have had examples on the ready, but
It's okay. Now I understand now what you're talking about. I just couldn't. I remember learning in school, but I couldn't tell you what it was.
Yeah, people don't jump on that as much as some of the others because a lot of people don't know how to do it right.
It's hard.
It's
I struggle with that.
It is.
Like, I have to think about it.
I didn't even mean that to be a joke.
I'm not
you
getting
did.
it's, okay, it's apostrophe is the contraction, right?
It apostrophe S is it is.
Okay, you see, that's hard to remember.
But there isn't an IPS apostrophe.
I didn't know that. Okay. But like it's, I feel like it should be taken possession of, so it should have that apostrophe. That's just what
If it doesn't have that.
if you possession of, you use IPS. You use
Yeah,
grammar.
that's what I'm saying.
Again, it's confusing. I mean, like, why? Why the English language does it stuff to us?
Just natural grammarly,
Oh,
whatever you use. So,
And then TO versus TOO.
That's
And
what it is.
let me add a couple.
I'm sorry, that was too, I didn't mean to do that.
Which,
I said that's hard too, I didn't mean to add to it.
all right, let me add another one for you. I have seen an assignment turned in with this phrase in it.
Oh,
That is not a phrase. Could of is not a phrase.
It's not.
No. No.
Okay.
Could have is not a phrase. Should have
Oh.
is not a phrase. Would have
Okay.
not a phrase.
That's what I say, I don't remember right.
It is could have or could have.
Ah.
Not that you would probably want to write could have in an email.
What about, oh goodness gracious, never mind. I lost it. It's one of those things where people say it wrong all the time.
Well.
Yeah, that's very descriptive, I know.
Something.
Couldn't care less.
Oh, yeah. Couldn't care less.
Or could they, they'll say, could
People say, I could care less.
Really good.
Yeah. Y'all heard the Weird Al Yankovic song about that? Word crimes.
I don't think I have.
Yeah.
I might look it up.
He has a line about that, like, that means you could care or whatever.
It's not, there we go.
Another one, and see, it corrected me. A lot, that's not a word. I see people write that.
You should put another T. Or another L.
I will allot this to you.
Is it another L or T?
No, I mean, when people are like, thanks a lot, or this happens a lot. A lot.
See, I remember it say separate words because in middle school, one of our teachers went on this side of the room and wrote A and walked all the way to the other side of the room
Nice.
and wrote lot. So you would remember this in different ways.
Stuck with you.
It's,
A lot. A lot is not a word unless you're allotting something, and then, that would be, that's not what we're talking about. And then for some reason, I've noticed lately that people screw this up now, loose versus lose.
Really?
Yeah, I've noticed in writing that people have done
Can you give me an example?
that. No.
Like they mean to say lose, but they say lose,
They
or they mean to say lose?
spell it, like, they just spell it wrong.
I mean, I have a specific friend who posted something on a thing and used it wrong. I could look it up, see how he did it, but it's been so long ago, I'll probably didn't find it, but
So I guess I was questioning, are they trying to say loose, or are they trying to say lose? Or is it
either,
both?
they mess them up interchangeably.
Oh, this means the.
But usually I think it's like, I'm gonna lose my mind, and they say LOOSE or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah,
I struggle with friend, man.
friend,
I cannot ever get it.
I before E,
But then the rule never works.
except after C. And a few other random things, but yeah,
Where's the ended way, like neighbor?
Yeah.
I-
it's, the English language is crazy.
Stupid. I hate
So, Be very careful though with these types of things. People get offended. They get really up in the air about that. Y'all have been on the internet. Y'all see what people do with their little asterisks and correcting people. All right. Oh, somebody said sell and sale. Yeah, I've seen that. Sell versus sale. I had that. That's a good one. sell versus sale. Yeah, use those correctly.
Or you could take it the next level and be sale,
SAIL. Sell versus sale versus sailing.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody struggles with that. Oh, man.
We could do this online.
We should take a break. We've been at it for a while. Y'all-
Have to go live too, and then you're just, no, I feel for you. Cool.
Okay, so shifting gears, unless anybody has anything else to add to our discussion. All right, so our final topic of the year, because we're only meeting one more time after this. So, in the area of research, back on the academic research side of things, we all talked about empirical archival studies, research, researching from data that exists, and crunching the numbers and everything. Y'all talked about behavioral research, where you're creating your own data. All of these are things you can do in a PhD program and as an accounting professor, and keep up your research duties. There's another type of research that's not nearly as commonly done, but way more fun than those two. You can do research on history of accounting, believe it or not. So why in the world would anybody care about the history of accounting? Does it sound extremely boring, or does it sound really interesting? So
when was the first double entry accounting started?
well, the first double entry accounting started. So there's some arguments on that.
Oh, wow.
I know. We always throw out the name, y'all know, the Italian guy,
Leonardo da Vinci?
not Leonardo da Vinci,
Italian, that's all.
Pacioli, Luca Pacioli.
Pacioli?
Pacioli. So, it's PACIO. That was in the 1400s, but they found evidence of double entry bookkeeping back in the 1200s even, I think. But he gets the credit, Luca does, Luca. See, you're already interested in accounting history.
I love history, man.
Yeah.
So this is like, ooh.
Oh yeah, it's great. So, some of the, I kind of like to kick this off with, we did a lot of accounting research or history research and learning in my program. And so I kind of put together some of the more interesting things just to kind of share, because you don't get this in any other class. And I find it to be really interesting. So here's some of the things we kind of picked up regarding accounting history along the way. So you will be interested to know that railroads are pretty much responsible for all the accounting things that we do. Not all, but a whole lot of them. We can trace most of it back to the railroads. Yep. So the industry was more than likely the most important contributor to our profession. The accounting before railroads was pretty much for yourself as the business owner. For next week, one of the research papers you will read is Accounting in Colonial Williamsburg. Someone found the accounting records of a merchant shop in Williamsburg and wrote a paper about what was done in those records. They were doing the accounting for themselves. That's an example of that. That was well before the railroads came along. So that's one of the papers you'll read for next time. Railroads, by about 1869, because it was such a huge undertaking, needed all this financing. They became the center of attention in the capital markets. Before the railroads, Wall Street's mostly dealing in government bonds and stuff like that. So, the oldest railroad in the U.S. is the B&O Railroad, which was incorporated in 1827 and opened in 1830. So that's where the railroads began.
It's still open today?
Baltimore and Ohio, I don't even know, probably in one way or another, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say so. Probably look that up real quick. But once that kind of happened in the 1830s to 1860s, big railroad boom. So we can trace back the development of pretty much all these things to the railroads. Income statement as we know it, balance sheet as we know it, auditing, internal auditing, operational auditing, and managerial accounting, we can all trace back to the railroads. All the financial reports that we know, we had the railroad managers needing cost data to operate the trains, cost accounting developed from that. We'll talk about that in a second. Investors are pouring all these unprecedented into these projects. They need to monitor management. So there's a need now for more public reporting of these financial statements and things like that. Regulators at the state level, regulators at the national level, they need to control rates. They need information. So all of this affected the format and the content of annual reports. The way we measure income, depreciation was new. We didn't really have these long-term, long-lived assets until railroads came about. Retained earnings as a source of capital was new, using internal auditors, auditing techniques, what I'm looking for, procedures. There it is. All developed managerial concept of fixed cost, variable cost, and throughput all came about. Before, profits were usually just paid out to the owners. Now we have profits being retained and used as a source of capital. Railroads are covering these huge geographic regions, so there's a need for internal auditors. There are traveling auditors that conducted these financial audits for verifying the accuracy of all the accounts of these branch locations and things. Basic auditing methods came about, recalculating, ticking, putting, cost checking, all of that kind of thing. Throughput, the concept came about, pretty much run as many runs as possible to increase revenue. Lots of ratio analysis came about at this time. So yeah, I just answered the question on throughput. So Albert Fink, father of cost accounting. I bet y'all didn't know that. Arguably the father of cost accounting. There's the old dude right now, right there.
Right now?
Right now. Yeah, it's funny you say that. So here's the thing about Albert Fink.
He's still alive today?
No, he's not alive.
That's where
So
you're going with it, I'm sorry.
when I travel, y'all know I'm here already, so I'm not trying to hide my movements. I always look for cemeteries and famous graves and stuff. I was in Louisville, Kentucky, looking for Colonel Sanders' grave there in Louisville, because that needed to be seen. Big old cemetery. So there's bound to be other people here. So I looked up famous people buried there, and sure enough, old Albert Fink is buried in the same cemetery as Colonel Sanders. So I went and found him.
Wow.
Yep.
What a fun story.
Isn't it? Fun story of death, right?
Yeah, the cemetery thing is a little odd, but.
It's Halloween week, so.
Right.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, he was accounted for B&O Railroad and the L&N, Louisville and Nashville Railroad. So in the 1870s, he developed this very detailed cost accounting system that was pretty widely copied in the industry there. He had these really elaborate formulas using the then revolutionary concepts of fixed and variable costs that we talk about now, and costs allocated to multiple accounting periods. He was able to use that information, calculate with pretty good precision the ton-mile cost of moving on certain parts of the track and sitting idle in the station. And basically, he found that portions of the track that had uphills cost more to run on, as we would know, but he calculated how much it would cost to run certain runs. Good cost information, right? I already said that, but 2 pamphlets, Fink report on cost of transportation. So, Albert Fink. Father of Costa County. There's another one that some argue might be the father of Costa County. We'll talk about it later. I got a whole thing on history of managerial accounting. We'll probably talk about that too. But, there was a Railway Accounting Officers Association that was developed, RAOA. Got accounting becoming a bigger business. Of course, you have these organizations that are going to form around that. This one was formed because there were problems with uniformity of accounting. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing. So here's a organization that forms that tries to deal with that. You kind of think of this as the precursor to some of the things we have now, right? 1887 is when that was developed. They were solving billing practice problems across the lines. It worked with the ICC for uniform accounting. You know, you have all these multiple lines that people are running on, and revenue sharing was an issue. You know, how do you share revenue and all of that? So they were formed to deal with that kind of thing. Public accounting was born from all of this. You have all these accountants that are working for the railroads, trained by the railroads. You didn't have accounting being taught in universities yet. You go and learn on the railroads. That's the training ground, right?
Feel like a trade.
Like, right, yeah. So back then, once accounting, public accounting was kind of born, you kind of flowed from industry into public. We're different now, right? We usually start in public and flow into industry. Back then, flow was from industry into public accounting. Interesting, right? So as the profession evolved, loyalties kind of shifted from the railroad employers more to the investors and then more to the general public. So public accounting was born and public accounting firms were formed. Some of you guys who got to go on our New York trip, the first trip, I sent y'all to find this. It was 2 blocks up from our hotel, and it's fate would have it. Haskins and Sells, there was a building where they had their offices there in New York. It was on 39th Street, I think. I may be wrong, but I think that's right. This is the first CPA partnership.
You send us on that?
Do what?
Did you send us
I
on
didn't send y'all to find that. I don't know why I didn't. I should have. I didn't even think about it. I don't know. That was stupid of me. I sent y'all to find it. I guess it slipped my mind to send the second group.
next time? I'll remember.
I don't know. Sorry about that.
There's a dump truck or something in front of it.
There was a dump truck in front of it when you went.
Yeah, we didn't get a really good view, but we didn't.
Good enough. Yeah.
Good enough to get a picture for this.
You probably could have gone back when that dump truck was gone. I don't- It was 2 blocks away.
We might have accidentally
Waited till the last minute.
Maybe.
You know, 2 blocks is so far.
Well, we had to get out of there the next morning.
So yeah, that was the first American CPA partnership, Haskins and Sells, 1895, dominated by the railroads. Clients were Philadelphia and Reading Railroad, the Erie Railroad, the Cincinnati and New Orleans Railroad, Wheeling and Lake Erie Railroad, the Atlantic Coast were all clients of this first CPA firm, which, by the way, over time evolved and became, as we know it today, Deloitte. So Deloitte's genesis is traced to Haskins and Sells. So that's what happened to it. More clients, we had more railroads, and actually Vassar College was one of their clients. Vassar, where is it, or what is it?
Where?
It's in New York somewhere, I think. Yeah. NYU as well was a client of the first CPA firm. And there's some more. I don't know. I got carried away, but I kept saying, oh, more new clients. Borden's, American Express.
Borden still make it?
Is that the cheese company?
Borden?
Oh.
Borden, that's the same company you think about. Yeah, they're the dairy company. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. City of New Rochelle and so forth. So here's interesting. Well, so there's the old guys right there, Haskins and Sells. Haskins on the left, Sells on the right. So Sells is Elijah Watt Sells. Are y'all familiar with that name at all? There's an Elijah Watt Sells award that's given by the AICPA for the top scorers on the CPA exam.
Oh,
I think they have to average 95 or better overall, if I'm not wrong about that. You know, I think it's 95.5 cumulative to get the Elijah Watt Sells award on the first attempt.
oh.
So y'all want to be recipients of the Elijah Watt Sells award.
Does that get you-
95.5 cumulative overall, 4 sections, first attempt.
Does it get you money?
Probably. I don't know. It's a good question. Get you an award.
Is there any incentive?
Get you
besides the
It
award?
gets you a heck of a line item for your resume.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that CPA practice, that's all it needs.
Oh, okay.
It would open up some doors, you know.
Yeah, well, yeah. You're right.
So Charles Waldo Haskins is the other guy. So they both had railroad experience. In fact, the first 11 partners at Haskins and Sells, 3 of those stayed for not too long, but the other 8 of those actually, yeah, the other 8 they all came from the railroads. So Haskins worked for this construction company that built railroads, and then he worked for an actual railroad, and then he was a comptroller for the Central of Georgia Railroad and for the Chesapeake and Western Railroad. Sells was an assistant station agent when he was 16 when he started working for the railroads. Yeah.
Question.
All right.
The answer. Difference between controller and comptroller.
Difference between controller and comptroller.
Yeah, I was a little off topic, but you said comptroller, and it reminded me, I wanted to know. Comptroller.
I don't know.
Okay,
That would be Googleable, I bet.
because I remember asking Miss Barksdale in 391,
She
and
didn't
then I
know
forgot about it since.
I don't know.
There's an answer.
Somebody's replying.
Somebody got us an answer.
Sweet.
Comptroller. See, I was about to say that too, and then
But see, okay, so I'm good with that, but then my business calls the head of our training department comptroller, and we're not a government contractor.
yeah. So I wonder if it's used incorrectly. I was about to
Yeah.
say exactly that, but then I looked it down and I saw that this guy Haskins was the comptroller of the railroad. Blow that theory out of the water, but I'm with you guys who are saying comptroller is government, and that may be how it's
It's
used,
supposed to be,
and maybe how it's supposed to be.
and then some people just don't use it correctly.
Possible. Yeah. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
People start using words and they become something else. For example, y'all know the word decimate. And we're like, oh, they were completely decimated. Decimated means to reduce by 1/10. That's what that word means.
Really?
Yeah.
That
just
is a
sounds
fun
like-
It
fact.
makes sense.
Like-
Yeah.
Decimal.
It sounds like it's just wiping something out, but it really means to reduce it by 1/10.
So we misused it.
Everybody misuses it.
Well, I won't use that word.
Well, this just says a comptroller is a management level position responsible for supervising the quality of accounting and financial reporting of an organization.
So a comptroller on your definition is a supervisor of the accounting function.
Management level.
Management level. So is there a difference between that and a controller?
Controller is a person that is the highest, is at the highest accounting level in the organization.
So a controller is higher than a comptroller on yours?
That's what it says.
Controller is a manager and a controller like the CFO.
It says a comptroller definition is a senior accountant in a government organization. However, the duties of a comptroller and a controller do not differ.
Uses don't differ.
So they were basically interchangeable, but comptroller is used more commonly in government and not-for-profit. And
Okay.
controller is used in for-profit.
All right, so we're all finding a whole bunch of different things. So one found that a controller is the highest level and a comptroller is under a controller. And then another found that comptroller is government and controller is industry, but they're used interchangeably. So basically, nobody knows and
I wonder if it's
everybody
like
uses it different.
A set apart thing, it's like people get confused, like they don't necessarily know, like, controller, just mean like, control something.
Comptroller sounds fancier.
It does,
You would
and
think the comptroller would be over the controller.
you think, oh, it's just not here.
Yeah, who knows?
Okay, sorry for the distraction.
Hey, there's no such thing as a distraction here.
Okay, well, I appreciate that you think that.
So Ole Miss has Haskins and Sells' records. So Ole Miss is where I got my PhD. So we're able to look at all this stuff. Someone else has looked at it very thoroughly. And some of the stuff they kind of pulled from that is their ledgers show the clients, the day, notes about the work, rates, partners' names or initials. EWS shows up as engagement partner the majority of the time. So Sells was the engagement partner most of the time. These were $15 a day for staff, $25 a day for principals, they call them, and $50 a day for partners plus travel. That was back in 1901 to 1903.
So what were the principles?
I guess that would be our equivalent of
Managers.
CPA manager type, senior managers, I guess. Staff would be staffers, maybe lower level folks. They didn't have the CPA exam yet, so that wasn't a thing. We're getting to that though. That's where it gets pretty interesting. If we have time, we may have to pick this up next time. One of the things that's interesting to me famous firsts.
That's pretty good. Right, it's still $475 a day. Not too much for like, so not too many more $15 a day. Today would be $475 a day. That's not too shabby. You think about it. 5 days a week. $2,000 a week.
So
Sorry, I gotta go talk.
who has, what's a billing rate these days for, I can't remember what my billable rate was back in the day, but I think my hourly billable rate was more than their daily one, even the partners. So yeah, it's way less than.
Yeah, but comparing to the, how much was worth $1.
Oh, yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah.
That's what I was
Yeah.
doing. So they're making $15 a day. Today, that's $470.
Oh, that's what you were saying. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were just saying in real money back then. That's,
Oh,
I got you.
No, I'm sorry. No.
I got you now.
Yeah, I was like, that's a pretty good list.
So CPA number one. Y'all ever wondered if there was a CPA number one? Some of the folks who went on the first New York trip already figured this out. CPA certificate number one was a guy named Frank Broker. A little background on that guy. February of 1893, he sued one of his clients. Broker had charged the client $3 per hour to straighten out his books, but the client thought the work was worth only $1. The jury found quickly for Broker, but he, from that experience, believed that problems were going to keep continuing along those lines until the state kind of formally recognized accountants as professionals. So there was a bill, the Ray bill with the W, that Broker helped draft, and that made New York the first state to create CPAs. So New York's where it all started. Y'all got an article to read over the week on this history of the first 100 years of the CPA as well. It's kind of got some of this information. In 1896, there was a CPA law that provided for a grandfathering provision. So these first CPAs did not have to take a test. They got grandfathered in based on experience. They could become a CPA without taking the exam. So during 1896 and 1897, 108 certificates were granted on this provision. People were grandfathered in. Broker was CPA number one because he was first in the alphabet. So that's why he got the first one. There was a group of 14 that got the first certificates, and he was number one because his name started with a B. Also in that group were Sells and Haskins, were both in that first group of CPAs. Also a guy named Charles Sprague, who is, all right, guess what? There's an accounting hall of fame. So, accounting hall of fame. All three of those guys, Haskins, Sells, and Sprague, are accounting hall of famers.
So what's this Hall of Fame?
The accounting hall of fame
Black Cooper's now?
is done in Ohio State. That was a AAA website. Here's what we need. So here's the website for the Accounting Hall of Fame. Our Accounting Hall of Famers are all listed here. These are 2020 inductees. I do not know any of them. Screwed around. Oh, there we go. So there's your members by the years they were inducted. So Sells was inducted in 52. Arthur Anderson was an accounting hall of famer. He gets a bad name, but he didn't do anything.
He's only good now, right?
Right. T. Coleman Andrews was an accounting hall of famer. He actually ran for president. Eisenhower beat him.
Oh, well, brother Tom.
There's Sprague right there. So he was one of the first CPAs. So yeah, there's some of your accounting hall of famers. This guy, Maurice Stans, was involved in Watergate. So, yeah.
Colored? Is it like colored engines? Apparently colored?
I don't think so. But let's see. It could be. I don't know. We can find out.
Lifelong bachelor.
A lifelong bachelor. In his leisure time, he enjoyed photography, electronics, and music. Goodness, that's a lot to read. They list why each were inducted. It was pretty interesting. Some of the recent inductees.
How do you get to that level?
Different things. You can do different things. You know, it's all about contribution to the profession. Back when we were a smaller class, and we got like 90 in here now, so it's not feasible. We used to have to do, as a requirement, I made everybody do a presentation on an accounting hall of famer and research them and figure out what they did and why they're an accounting hall of famer. And, I remember somebody was like, I know how you like graves, Dr. Cagle. So look, I found their grave. I'm like, bonus points. Nice. So that's what we used to do, but it's just not feasible to do presentations now. Someone said there doesn't seem to be many women in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, I mean, that's true. The profession was certainly dominated by men, and I've got some things to say about that as we do different presentations, some things that'll probably make all of us kind of angry at the way things went down. But yeah, you'll notice that your inductees toward more recent times are you won't find as many. I don't know when the first woman was inducted. That'd be a good thing to know.
Why do they have years that there were no inductees? Were there just not invited?
I guess they just didn't have anybody worth inducting. Looks like they got kind of lazy right here, and like somebody's like, oh, we need to pick back up on the accounting Hall of Fame again. You know, that's probably what happened. Right? How do they choose it? How do they induct it? There's I don't know what their process is, honestly. It's a good question. I'm sure they'll tell about it right here if we look, but it's changed over the years, I think. The AAA has a hand in it these days.
Where they like cost more to, or like they were legal to choose, or
What now?
it was like after they died, or that was.
No, not always. So like Gary Kravitz down here is, where'd he go?
2011.
Yeah, so this guy, I chose him because he's one of the ones I know the best and to talk about. You know, is at Case Western in Ohio. One of my classmates at Ole Miss got permission to go to Case Western for a semester and work with him. He's big on accounting history. That's his thing. In fact, here's a book that we had to read called A History of Accountancy in the United States. Author is Gary John Previtz, co-author anyway. Barbara Marino is the other. So yeah, he's still doing it. So yeah, no, it's not one of those things where it's long after they've passed on.
If you'll scroll down, I saw one of the ones in 2020, Victor Simpson. I think he died and he was just, yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like he did die in 1992.
That was weird to me.
He was the face of internal auditing for half a century, played a key role in laying the foundation for the modern practice of internal auditing, and co-founded an organization that represents more than 200,000 internal auditors in 200 countries. I guess that would be the IIA. Yeah.
I just think like, why in 2020 does he get?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure someone brought his name forth and they're like, wow, how did we overlook him? Yeah, let's, I'm not sure how it all works. But I don't know. I don't know.
There was a Lord on there. I thought that was good.
Lord, Mary,
First woman was inducted in 2007, someone said. So let's see. Catherine Schipper, the name I'm familiar with. I can't remember why. I think I had to read one of her papers in my PhD program. In fact, I'm sure of it. So yeah. So there was our first female. Since we're talking about firsts, we only got a few minutes, but let's bounce back here. And we'll pick back up next time. So he went on to do some other things, but he got in a little bit of, I guess, trouble. I don't know, but he published a book, Broker Again, we were talking about, that contained a bunch of questions and answers from the first CPA exam, and he kept proceeds from the sale of the book, and he got in trouble for kind of doing some of that. You can actually find a copy of that on Amazon if you wanted to read through it for some leisure reading. He also formed a society of accountants with himself as president, and it was alleged that he led prospective members to believe that a board of regents might be willing to waive the CPA exam for its members. So the board of regents removed him from his post. I found an old New York Times article that says Frank Broker wants his post back, and it has a little, it's kind of digging around one day and found all this, but yeah, it's interesting. First female CPA, not too much longer after, right? June 1898, she successfully passed the New York CPA exam. She scored either the second or third highest in her group. So, silver or bronze medalist. But listen to this. Her certificate was withheld while officials decided whether a woman should be certified. Back in 1898. She was ultimately, I told you, these things will make us mad. She was ultimately awarded certificate number 143 at the, a year and a half after she passed. Her name was Christine Ross.
That's sad, but at the same time, women couldn't vote at that time.
Right.
Not excusing this, but,
right.
Time back then.
Yeah, we might have expected it to be a little later.
Honestly, I would have thought it would have been later.
It's interesting. There's not a whole lot of information, but some that I found. She did begin practicing accounting around 1889. Her clients included women's organizations, wealthy women, and people working in business and fashion. So that's Christine Ross. What else?
I would be so mad to be number 2 and then go to.
I know, to ace the
40-something.
exam and for people to question whether you could legitimately, yeah. The first African-American CPA was a guy named John Cromwell. I actually found a picture of him. I couldn't find a picture of Broker or Christine Ross, but I did find a picture of him. He was educated at Dartmouth, passed the CPA exam in New Hampshire in 1921. So his career, he worked exclusively in the African-American community at a time when they were faced with discrimination. He was there's that word again, comptroller at Howard University. So I guess comptroller here, yeah, I don't know. That's all I could find on him. And then Mary T. Washington Wiley, I guess it's pronounced, or maybe Weil, I'm not sure. Interesting about her. First female African-American CPA. So I have a younger picture and an older picture, but her story is interesting. She ran an accounting business out of her basement while she was studying at Northwestern. She earned her bachelor's in 1941, got her CPA in 43. Served an apprenticeship with a guy named Arthur Wilson, who was the second African-American to earn the CPA license. That happened in 1923. In 1968, she founded a firm in Chicago called Washington and Pittman. Remember, she's Washington. Now, still exists as Washington, Pittman, and McKeever, LLC, one of the largest African-American owned firms in the nation. So you can Google them and their website's up and you can see all about them. They're still doing business. So I like Famous First. So I got more. We're running out of time, but there's more interesting little tidbits that we can talk about next time. I'll let you know what your assignments will be. So we'll meet in 2 weeks, not in 1 week. One of your assignments will have to do with rewriting your assignment that you turned in this week after hearing all our crazy discussion this time.
Correctly, like the correct answer, or just rewrite it?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, rewrite it, correct answer, make any changes you want to make. Easy points, really. Just take what you did and look at it again and see if there's any changes that you think are necessary. Yeah, you would probably want to do the correct answer. So that'll be
the question.
that'll be due in a week, and I'll send an announcement about that. In 2 weeks, I'll post all this, what we're doing. I got 3 papers for us to read. 3 papers to read. You're gonna like these. I chose things that'll be fun. And we'll do a short write-up on each, which I'll send instructions about. This paper, you'll find this to be really interesting. It's all about a guy who put together this fraud that's just crazy and worked for a long time. His name is Ivar Kruger. So the paper's called Ivar Kruger's Contribution to U.S. Financial Reporting. So it's all about his fraud. It's all about the aftermath of the fraud, and it's all about how that fraud led to some changes that we made that the authors suggest can be tied back to that. Really interesting paper. So that'll be one of them. Dale and Tanya Flesher, Ole Miss. He was my dissertation chair. She was Bunker's dissertation chair. Yes. They are married. So that'll be one of them. The other one will be that one in Colonial Williamsburg that I talked about, on accounting in colonial Virginia. Not as exciting of a read, but it's one that is worth reading, just to get an idea of the types of history research that are out there. And the other one is called The First Century of the CPA. So it talks about Frank Broker and how New York did all this mess, and it's got a whole bunch of little tidbits. It's a Journal of Accountancy. It's a magazine article. Look at the authors: Dale Flesher, Gary Previtz, a small little community. The names, they all pop up. The same names always tend to pop up. Right? So that was a quick and easy read and kind of an interesting read too. So there's, it's funny, you had mentioned about women voting, and when we were talking about Christine Ross, this says, here's a picture saying 2 decades before women could vote, Christine Ross passed the CPA exam. In 1909, 10 women were CPAs, 1933, over 100. So it gives more history about things like that. So those 3 papers will be due in 2 weeks. I'll post all of this with better instructions. But that's where we're headed, and then we'll close it out next. Stay past time now. There's no questions. I enjoyed it. Fun night. Passed by quickly. See you next week. I got a murder to tell you all about that happened with a textbook publisher.
A murder?
A murder
Crazy.
back
Is
in,
this one?
yeah, with an early accounting textbook author.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Fun time.
Hey, we didn't get to it tonight.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Could you do your dissertation on accounting history?
I did not do a dissertation on accounting
Could you
history.
do?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Could you?
Oh, yeah. At Ole Miss, there's been several.
Okay.
Um,
That's the first time I've actually heard of a dissertation that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Doing any kind of research to me, I just,
So I didn't do my dissertation on it, but I did do an assignment on it. At Ole Miss, in their library archives, they had all the financial records and all kinds of other records on this 1940s dance orchestra from Vicksburg, Mississippi. So I got all those records and looked at them and wrote up a paper on it. It really ended up being more interesting from a management point of view. So one of the management professors at Ole Miss got hold of it and beefed it up and got it in a good publishable condition from that angle, and got a really good publication out of it.
gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
Yeah.
I have another question.